Welcome friends, it's Caleigh Bird, and today we are going to talk about expanding your oil painting palette past the 5 colors we initially discussed as a beginner's palette, as well as in the simple skin tones video. You probably remember that we were not able to match every single color in the sunflower tutorial, which makes sense because it is impossible to match every single color from simply these 5 paints. As you continue on your oil painting journey, you'll probably find that you need more colors. So today I'm going to give you my recommendation all the way down the rainbow of some other great paints to add to your repertoire. If you learn a little something today, please make sure you hit that thumbs up button so more folks see it. Make sure you're subscribed and ding that notification bell so that you are here every single week for all the best fine art technique and art biz advice. Now, as you advance with oil painting, you will, of course, want to expand your palette a little bit. So here's a few of my favorites aside from the 5 we've already gone over. So this is your permanent alizarin crimson. This is one of the 5 we decided was very good to have at the beginning. And this is a great red to have. However, you will notice this has more of a translucent sort of look to it. It's not super thick. You can definitely see through it. It's a lighter shade of red. And here we have cadmium red, which is very popular for a lot of artists. And this one has a bit more of an opacity to it. This is just generally a thicker paint. And usually when paints are a bit thicker versus more oil, then they tend to need a little bit more to blend with. And that is simply because they have more of a thick, probably white or natural neutral base, whereas these are more of like a tint color. So I definitely recommend, if you would like to have more of an opaque red, the cadmium red works very well. I also really love cadmium orange. Now, orange is definitely a color that is quite easy to make yourself. However, I tend to use this a lot for dipping into to make other colors a bit warmer, and it doesn't have quite the dominant effect that red does. So when I'm using often skin tones, or even if I'm trying to just warm up any kinds of yellows or browns, anything like that, I take very tiny dips. I'll usually put a tiny bit of this on my palette and I'll take little teeny dips into this orange. So I wind up using this cadmium orange quite a lot. Now let's talk yellows. So this is your cadmium yellow, of course, which is a fabulous basic yellow to have. I highly recommend every artist have one of these. And I also find lemon yellow to be extremely helpful too, because some things you want to get very bright, especially if you decide to do any sort of paintings, anything tropical plants, fruits, anything like that, or just in general in skin tones as well. You can use this great lemon yellow to really brighten things up. You're never going to be able to get your cadmium yellow to be as bright as this lemon yellow. So I really like to have this in my cachet as well. And then ochre is a bit of a yellow too. And this one is definitely incredibly useful for skin tones as well as any kind of nature painting. If you're painting any beach scenes, trees, branches, anything like that, ochre is a really nice one to have. Of course, this one is one that you could make from the cadmium yellow, but I find that I use the ochre so often when painting more natural things that it's just worth it to have a tube. Now we'll talk about another brown I like, and this sort of goes along in the same vein a bit with the ochre, in that anytime you want to paint skin or nature or trees or anything like that, you're going to want a fair amount of browns, of course. So this is the raw umber that we had to begin with, which is a really good, solid, dark and cool brown that can almost be used as like a black or anything good, cool shadows. And now this is more of a bright and very, very warm brown, which is the burnt sienna. And it's literally, you hear the word burnt as in fire, as in warm. So this is burnt sienna, and of course sienna is a type of tree. So again, any kind of nature painting, people, anything like that, you're going to want to use a little bit more browns in there. So burnt sienna is a great one to have. Now, as we're going from reds to blues, we'll go ahead and talk about having a little bit of a purple or violet at the ready. Violet or purple is one of the most difficult colors to mix because the tendency is to go very dark, which is just what the pigments naturally do, or else to look very pastel. So to have a nice, rich, middle of the road, violet sort of purple color is actually a pretty difficult one to attain. So I highly suggest purchasing something like a magenta, which is what this is. You can even find some purples, but I feel like magenta, even though it's more on the pink side, can be mixed with a little bit of blue or white and can be quite a versatile tone that gives yourself the purple that you're looking for without all the hassle of trying to mix it yourself every time. And on to blues. Now this ultramarine is a lot like the alizarin in that it is a fabulous color to have as one of your basic colors because it is so versatile. However, this also has a bit more of a translucence to it, a little bit more transparency than say your cobalt blue, which is going to be a lot more opaque. And the cobalt, because it is more opaque, it's a little bit more of a thicker paint, again, just like how we were talking about the cadmium red. So this one you're going to be able to use more quantity, whereas the French ultramarine can tend to be a bit more of a tint, where you'll need other paints to sort of make up a lot to constitute using this, whereas this one is going to be a little bit usable more so out of the bottle with just other things to influence it rather than being a tint. And the cerulean is good in the same way that the lemon yellow is. So you are going to be able to make either of these lighter and lighter, but not necessarily brighter and brighter, the way that the cerulean is very bright. So if you're doing tropical paintings, or maybe you're doing more like fantasies, that kind of thing, something where you're sort of making things up, surrealism, then you might want to go very bright with what you're doing. So that cerulean is going to give you the brightness that the cobalt and the ultramarine just won't be able to attain. And finally, we'll talk green and gray. So this iron oxide green is one of my favorite greens, specifically because it is very middle of the road. You can get quite light with this, you can get quite dark with this, and I actually wind up using a lot of this in skin tones to neutralize the pinks and reds. So I fully endorse this iron oxide green. If you only get one green, I think this is a really good one to get. And then last but not least, this is Payne's Gray, and I know it looks just about black, and honestly, this is an especially rich Payne's Gray, but you can see it is a slight bit of a grayness to it. Now this one is really good because the places that you might want black, this is going to be a richer substitute. But the places where you want the darkness of black to influence shadowing without the sort of bleakness of black, this is excellent because this will enrich other colors when you blend with them instead of turning them a slight greenish hue, which is exactly what black oil paint can do sometimes. This is going to keep everything that you mix with it cool, and you only need tiny little bits of this at a time. You can also mix this with white, of course, to make a beautiful wide variety of grays. So if you do decide to do a little black and white grayscale painting, I highly recommend Payne's Gray rather than black. In fact, I don't recommend black at all. I recommend only using Payne's Gray.
If you need to stock up on any of these paints, your local art store can probably help you out, or you can jump down to my affiliate links below. Any purchases through my special Dick Blink links helps to support this channel at absolutely no extra cost to you, so thank you so much. Want to learn even more about oil painting? Awesome, you are in luck because this video is actually just one part of my complete guide to oil painting series, which includes videos not only about the best paints, brushes, and supplies to stock in your own art studio, but detailed instruction on how to actually use all your supplies, as well as sharing my own personal painting techniques. You can actually watch this entire series completely for free, either on my Skillshare or here in this playlist right here, because I have got a wealth of oil painting knowledge to share with you. So if you did learn something today, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the notification bell, and come back every single week for all the best fine art tutorials and art biz advice.